Hello, everyone. So yesterday, I returned from Philadelphia, actually, where I was at the RGL Philly LAN. It's where invite playoffs were played, as well as an open sign-up tournament, or, I guess it is a tournament, a cup, that I participated in. Great experience overall. Highly recommend going to any LANs that you can. But I figure a very good topical video to return to relates to LANs, because a very common discussion, common cope as well, among Sixes players is that of ping. So I want to talk about ping, talk about how it matters, if it matters, as well as go on to discuss kind of LANs, the weight that the community places on them, as well as how the game plays differently in a meta game sense in a LAN setting. So, yeah, a lot to cover, I suppose. First things first, though, what do I mean by ping? Well, ping is not a TF2 unique thing. It's more of a internet connection thing. Because, of course, TF2 is played on servers, meaning that the information is sent from your client to the server and back to update both of which on what's happening. This can't be done instantaneously. It takes literal time in milliseconds for your information to be sent to the server and for the server's information to be sent to you. And this is ping. It's usually measured in milliseconds. And it determines a lot of things, right? So, for starters, hit scan is usually not too different on a higher ping. Ping doesn't influence it as much because TF2 does have lag compensation measures in place, meaning that if you shoot someone and then by the time the information that you shot gets to the server, your crosshair is no longer on them, the client will do some work to be like, yeah, no, it was like we were aiming here. That's not it's not really the case for projectiles, where your projectile will not spawn until the server knows that you shot it. Meaning at high ping, you definitely notice it more when you are playing a projectiles class like Demo or Soldier. That isn't to say that ping doesn't matter on Scout whatsoever. Well, we'll get to this in a moment. So, higher ping means that you have more latency to the server. It means that your actions are less... there's a bit of delay between your actions happening on your screen and your actions happening in the actual game. And yeah, that's obviously something that will affect gameplay. So as far as affecting gameplay goes, I mean, for starters, having high ping definitely hurts you as a projectile player because your projectiles are literally spawning later than they would otherwise if you had a stronger connection to the server. Assuming that your reaction time and everything like that is all equal, then yes, if you play on, 80 ping, then you will shoot a projectile 40 milliseconds later than someone who has 40 ping. As far as the actual metrics for ping, people play the game so much that, yes, you can very easily recognize when you're playing on high ping. For me personally, I start to notice a difference in ping, usually around the 80 mark. Although even like 60 can be like just a tiny bit noticeable. But especially if you're going into like the triple digits, then it really starts to affect the game negatively. And playing with like 120 ping is honestly like so much less fun for me because the game just feels way less reactive. So yeah, that's the kind of metrics you're looking at. So of course for Demo and Soldier it's a big deal because your projectiles come out later. For Scout, as I was mentioning earlier, your scattergun and pistol aren't really affected as strongly, but your movement definitely is, because you're just going to get like two-rocketed a lot more on a really high ping. It's hard to move as well as a Scout. I suppose that applies to Medic as well. And then, Medic, I suppose, has a projectile and the arrows. But if you're missing arrows to ping, then your teammates probably weren't making themselves arrowable enough to begin with. So yeah, considering that ping is a consideration that I'm saying consider twice. Since ping matters, and ping is going to give lower ping is going to give you an advantage in the game. It's no surprise that there's a lot of kind of ping cope. You have players who live on, for example, the West Coast of the United States or Canada, or South American players as well, who maybe don't have as strong a scene for themselves and find themselves playing on North American servers a lot. It makes things more difficult, especially since North American TF2 at least tends to use one region for their servers, which is Chicago. So yeah, you're at a small but potentially noticeable advantage or disadvantage based on just your region, which definitely leads to a lot of discussions. It's some serious level of cope to die to someone and then say that they wouldn't have killed you if they didn't have 5 ping, which happens a lot. I mean, Corsa's entire career was summed up as 5 ping by none other than Banny. But it would be incorrect to say it isn't a small advantage in some sense. So yeah, ping definitely matters. It doesn't matter as strongly as, some people like to claim at times. But if you do live in a place where you just regularly get 80 ping, that's not going to be too nice. You're going to be able to feel that if you have enough experience in the game, and it will just be a bit of a nuisance. So that being said, what does LAN do differently? Well, LAN, which I think is short for Local Access Network, although none of that matters, is when you actually go to a physical venue, and by doing so, rather than having, you can essentially just hook the computers up to the server directly, so you don't have to worry about ping. Everyone is playing on 5 ping or 1 ping or whatever, which makes a difference, of course. As you would expect, it is no different functionally from playing on 5 ping in that sense, as far as the literal LAN experience goes. However, well, let's finish this off first. So because this eliminates ping altogether, and also in some sense because it is an in-person event that people travel to and actually commit time to, rather than just a couple hours on their computer at home, which is relatively convenient. As a result, LAN has a lot of value placed on it historically. I know back in the early ESEA days, Invite Playoffs was played at LAN, I think, every season. And international LANs, which we haven't really seen one in quite a while, but international LANs used to be a really, well, it's essentially if you beat someone on LAN, that matters way more than beating them online, because that is where things actually matter. So as far as international competition goes, as far as playoffs competition goes, or just you have some random rivalry with some team or some player, and you really want to win, well, you better do that on LAN, which may or may not have been the story with this match you're watching, but whatever. So yeah, a lot of placement a lot of weight is placed onto LAN performances, and just LAN in general as kind of the highest level of competition, which is a little interesting because, in my opinion, there's some things you do miss at a LAN. Some of the finesse and the nuance of the game, I'll say. Yeah, so maybe we're going to talk about that right now, actually. So yeah, what is different about LAN? Well, it is not just the ping, because there are a whole bunch of logistical differences or logistical considerations towards making a LAN happen. The big one being you need to actually be in a venue, right? So venues are loud, and oftentimes you're going to be borrowing peripherals from whatever venue it was, and these aren't always going to be of the highest quality. You have to make sure to include your config, because otherwise you're going to be playing on some really scuffed setups, things like this. Usually, I mean, all the computers are going to be nice, so you don't have to. In some cases, there's going to be like an FPS or even monitor refresh rate upgrade, which is quite nice. But you're still in a very loud place where a lot of people are talking, and that can make hearing things quite difficult. So one big thing about a LAN match is that comms are generally going to be a bit tougher to discern, especially like you're going to have a much tougher time hearing the game. So a lot of the more nuanced parts of the sound of TF2, such as being able to know a soldier's bombing because you hear the bomb, or being able to hear spies decloak. In some crazy cases, you see clips of players killing cloaked spies because they hear their footsteps, which is... I'm not on a level of hearing footsteps. I would never will be, but that is just some insanity that you can get out of a very controlled, quiet home. You get to hear everything happening in game. This is definitely not the case at a LAN venue. So a lot of these sounds are going to be completely missed. And it's going to be just a lot of very shouty, chaotic comms because, again, people are excited to play and they definitely want to win. So you have people trying a lot harder generally than you might for, just any other match that you might play on a Tuesday night. So with that in mind, perhaps it's time to talk about how the meta game of LAN is different. So I think a good place to start is that when you have a 5 ping or is like a 1 ping environment for all players involved, the levels of play are much higher. As in, you as an individual player can feel that you're hitting more shots, and it feels as though everything is in your control by and large. Whether it is or isn't is in part up to the amount of sleep you get, I suppose, as well. But you're hitting pipes way easier. You're hitting rockets way easier. Like Soldier on LAN is insane. The rockets that you can hit, and I'm sure some of this could be placebo, but there are certainly advantages to having like a 24 or 240 hertz monitor and playing on 5 ping. You're just going to hit more shots as a projectile player. But overall, it just feels cleaner, feels neater. So you feel, and on some level, stronger than you would online. So that, in conjunction with the fact that people are excited, and in conjunction with the fact that you're not necessarily going to be able to hear as much that's going on in game, so some of the delicacy is lost, means that the LAN metagame is one which is more DM-oriented, fight-oriented, and more centered around, like, taking smart fights. Still, of course, you're not just, like, monkeying through. But winning fights, like, through hitting shots and DM and whatnot, which is, still a common occurrence in the game as it's played online still. But nonetheless, I think that teams are more willing to take fights, more willing to get aggressive, and more willing to kind of make action happen, I guess, in a LAN environment. Because, again, people are psyched up. And when you feel as though you're hitting more shots, you're going to want to take more fights because that gives you the opportunity to do so. Was there anything else? I'm trying to think. I don't recall. But yeah, overall, LAN is a very nice experience. It's where some of the best TF2 gets played. And despite that, though, there's definitely some differences in how the metagame kind of is, because of course you have much more action, I suppose, as far as teams just way more willing to take fights, because yeah, you just feel like you're hitting all your shots. So anyway, I'll probably wrap things up here. As far as ping is concerned, yeah, definitely a big discussion in the community, one that is rife with cope, but not completely unfounded cope, because yes, having a lower ping does, in a literal sense, and sometimes in a actual noticeable sense, change how the game runs and functions for you as a player. Anyway, that's all for me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.